tech startup has been going for quite a number of years. We consolidated a number of tech startup companies into the group in 2014. Got 16 employees and growing. I've been supported by a number of funds such as North Star and Key Funding in the Northeast and private equity. We were part of the Stock Exchange Group's Elite Programme, which is recognised as a high growth company a few years ago. Before we were high growth, and we're still not high growth, but we are getting there. One of the things that we've done before setting up, or as we were setting up, was make sure that we protected the intellectual property that sat behind the solutions that we're going to show here today. It's been quite a journey with two legs and with one leg, and we've been supported by Innovate UK on a number of occasions with a number of early propositions and feasibility studies, and we've actually moved over the years from the curbside management tool into a wider curbside management tool, which also incorporates things such as Dash, which is a last mile delivery solution to help revitalise the high street. So it's a platform for independent traders to compete against the supermarkets. We've just finished a project with a southeast airport, a major southeast airport, looking at accessibility for disabled travellers. But what I'd like to introduce today is this problem area, which is the curb space. Many competing users for the curb space, and as we've heard, traffic regulation orders, traffic signs regulations, general directions. It's a big, complex issue, complex area. You've got different types of users who interact with the curb space, from the general motorist, buses, coaches, other vehicles, private goods vehicles, lorries, trucks, commercial freight vehicles. You've got waste management, circling construction vehicles. You've got cycles, scooters, car share schemes, all interacting with the curb space. And some of the issues, such as we saw in San Francisco, where the policy was playing catch up with the fact that there were a load of scooters just dumped on the street. I was actually in San Francisco when they did this, and there were scooters everywhere. They were just dumped by commercial operators to say this is how we're going to do it in the future. And San Francisco then had to legislate and catch up policy to cope with it. There we are, there was the scooter. And delivery by drones, and sometimes I think I have to give the view from the real world, which is that if an average courier, parcel courier, has to deliver 150 to 250 parcels a day, the reality is that that's not going to be done by drone delivery. It's going to be done by a person with a van, moving as efficiently as possible through the city. And sometimes with technology it doesn't work, so we could have a drone just stuck in the sky. There we go. So the main problem that we've started to address is driven by poor air quality, congestion, poor road safety as well. And the curb space, which is a piece of static real estate, it's a finite piece of real estate. We're looking at how we can change that to be something which can be intelligently managed and more dynamically managed. But these are the problems. Deaths from poor air quality in central London, 9,000 a year. Time spent idling in traffic, congestion and pollution. Real major issues these days. And it's at the macro level, which has become a global issue in cities around the world because of the congestion, because of urban deliveries and the increase in urban populations. We're looking at poor air quality in many areas. And then really at the micro level, it causes people to die. And Ella Kissy-Debra's death has now been, or it's in the process of being reclassified as being due to air pollution. And so that leaves a big impact on local authorities and the air quality strategies that they're going to have to adopt. So if I can just introduce Curb, pretty simple idea. I come from a background of assisting some of the large commercial freight operators with their penalty charge notice issues, which was a £350 to £400 million a year problem. And unlike Baz, when I start mentioning traffic orders, everybody does leave the room, but you mention that you can assist somebody with a parking ticket, you're everybody's best mate. So we're looking at the problem of commercial freight deliveries needing to be at curbside, circling vehicles, not enough curbside provision, not enough loading provision. So we created the proposition of Curb, which is a dynamic piece of real estate, which is the ability to create a space for that vehicle to be at that location at a certain time, which is a virtual loading bay. And it's an exception to an area where loading is prohibited. and we create a digital permissions wrapper that sits above the TRO. And again, it's a ridiculous situation where vehicles have been encouraged to consolidate, but then penalised for taking too long to deliver. And what we're looking at is how we repurpose that curb space with, again, a permissions layer, whereby if you want to be there for 60 minutes to consolidate goods and deliver, then you can do that with the permissions wrapper that sits around the traffic order. A couple of projects that we've embarked on. One of the ones that we did with Transport for London was looking at construction sites. The one that we're doing now just started. It's an Innovate UK funded project, and it's to develop a freight traffic control system for commercial construction traffic. And we're working with the London Borough of Croydon to help deliver the first feasibility study on this. And again, it's just coming back to applying common sense and straightforward logic to this. If you've got cement trucks coming into the town and getting as close to the site as possible and then having to wait until they're called in and they're circling around, that creates congestion. So we're looking at creating holding bays, repurposing some of the curb space, whether it be on street or in areas of off-street car parks, using some of the car parks as holding areas. And again, it's just pretty much a common sense approach as to how we make things a little bit better and achieve the marginal gains that we need to do across the city. Benefits: manages the curb space more efficiently, reduces the penalties. So it's from the commercial operator's perspective, it's a win-win for them. Saves money by reducing time and mileage spent searching for space and circling. Opening up curb space, opening up the landscape so it's more dynamic, creating opportunity windows, reducing emissions, and again, the impact on air quality that comes from emissions from vehicles. We need the data there. We need to know where it's happening, how to measure a baseline of air quality, and how the improvements in vehicle movements are going to improve the air quality. Commercial fleets, they can make big savings. They're working on very tight margins as it is, so if they can make any sort of efficiency gains, it's a benefit to them and a commercial benefit. And the retailers, instead of retailers just reacting to a delivery, I mean, where this first came from, I was doing some work with DHL trade team and Carlsberg and some of the brewery logistics groups, and you'd see the delivery driver turning up, parking the wagon outside the pub, getting out of the vehicle, knocking on the door. The guy would open the door and say, "Oh, it's my beer delivery. I'll go and open the cellar doors." Once you start applying GPS-enabled technology to that, you can create a geofence breach, so the knocking on the door could happen 2 minutes before you get there, so the dwell time's reduced. And again, the marginal gains benefit everybody. And we can integrate it into fleet management systems, so as we grow, the more information that's integrated and integrated digitally, the easier it becomes to operate your dynamic routing and scheduling. Problems we've had problems with procurement. Lots of local authorities want, especially in the UK, can we see it done somewhere else first, which is a big issue. That's why Innovate UK has been extremely useful to allow us to work with the local authority on a feasibility study and a test project, and then take the findings and introduce the findings to the enablers. And again, what we see is, once we've proven the concept, it doesn't need to be reproven with another pilot in another area. It's about moving from pilot to demonstration, proving the concept, and then starting to scale. And the issues that we've had with policy and legislation, again, the policy and legislation in many instances has to play catch-up, and we're using dispensation and waiver processes to create the exemptions to the restriction. But again, if we look at the TRO discovery process and how we move forward, it could be building into new TROs, and there is a better way of doing things. Projects and the traction that we have, we're working with DPD in Sunderland, we're working with DPD in a number of London areas as well, as to how we look at fleet optimization and the use of the curb space, better use of the curb space. And again, looking at this situation, one of the pilots that we did, instead of the vehicle doing 20, 30 drops across the city and being curbside for 4 or 5 minutes where they may or may not incur a PCN, we looked at allowing them to be curbside in a certain location where they could park up for 2 hours and do 30, 40, 50 deliveries from that location on foot. And again, you can start integrating the micro depot proposition into that, so you're not having those circling vehicles around the city. They're actually static curbside. I mentioned we're working with the London Borough of Croydon on the freight traffic control. And Dublin, we started with Dublin, and what Dublin said is that we might have some problems with some of the local bylaws, will you sit down and help us rewrite them so they're fit for purpose? And again, it's a great way to move forward. And the value of the curb space, we were actually mentioned in one of the US magazines in Parking Today, where somebody did a brief analysis. If we start to look at the curb space as a valuable piece of real estate that could be commoditized and commercialized and create the efficiency savings for the operators and the enforcement provisions that sits behind it as well, the value of the curb space in New York alone could be $3 billion. Once you start to multiply that globally, the impacts as well, the air quality impacts and the congestion, reduction in congestion, everybody wins. Now this is going to be the tricky bit where I try and play the video. They'll play. So this, rather than me talking, this is an easy way just to demonstrate what we're trying to do.
Dublin is the hub of commerce in Ireland, accounting for 53% of Ireland's gross domestic product. With more people migrating to live and work in our expanding cities, roads are getting increasingly congested. Dublin is now one of the worst cities in the world to be a driver, with commuters spending almost 250 hours stuck in cars, travelling at less than 10 kilometers per hour last year. Traffic congestion in the city is costing the economy around €350 million a year. Congestion contributes to poor air quality with negative effects on health and well-being. Grid Smarter Cities is working with the Smart Dublin initiative to help try and solve these problems. We want to change the way we navigate and interact with our cities to make them more efficient, more helpful, and smarter. Grid has developed Curb, a patented real-time intelligent curbside management solution for cities. Curb allows commercial vehicle operators to book slots to load or unload on previously unavailable or restricted curb space in high-density urban areas, or to extend loading periods in time-restricted locations. Grid has worked with Dublin to identify areas that could benefit from virtual bays, lifting a restriction to promote a behavioural change and help to ensure more deliveries get made when it causes the least disruption. Curb removes the risk of receiving a penalty for commercial operators, reduces circling traffic and congestion, thereby improving air quality and road safety. It maximizes the value from underutilized curb space, helping to create virtual loading bays at locations where parking may traditionally be prohibited. With the ever-increasing pressures on our urban curb space, there has never been a solution that offers such a win-win for public authorities, commercial operators, businesses, and citizens. We look forward to working with the Smart Dublin initiative to help create a cleaner, safer, and more efficient city for all.
It's taken us 10 years to become an overnight success, and we're starting to be recognised by the industry, ITS UK, the parking industry, Freight Transport Association as well. And yeah, third-party endorsement has been fantastic for us because it's not just us now saying it's a great idea. We've got other parties doing so. Been on a number of trade missions, again supported by the Department for International Trade and Innovate UK and the Connected Places Catapult. And would you believe that the same problems exist everywhere in the world? So we have a great opportunity to showcase globally what we can do and how we can do it and how we can change things. And again, I've done all of this on one leg, so I'm hoping that when I get two legs, we'll be a lot more efficient. Off to Singapore at the ITS World Congress in a few months' time, and Hong Kong is a really useful one as well, because one of the guys who works at the Department for Transport in Hong Kong did a master's at Imperial University on intelligent curbside management. So he interviewed us and Abbey Parking as well. Again, about looking at what the future looks like. This is how we work. We don't try and build the elephant from scratch. We try to build little bits of the elephant that stick together. And sometimes from building IT's perspective, you don't build the big thing, you build little things that work together. So we've got the jigsaw box, we know what the picture looks like, but it's about putting those bits of the jigsaw together. And we work with the operators. As I can say, coming from Sunderland, we've lived and worked in the gutter, and knowing where those yellow lines are and what the impact of loading prohibition is on commercial operators. you need to understand what it's like. You need to understand what it's like to be that HGV driver turning up with 12 pallets and being told you've got to park 200 yards away because that's where the legal loading provision is, and they'll park in contravention at a time that suits them, not the network. And the £65 discount cost of a PCN is a cost of doing business. So you need to understand all of the nuances. Every one of the actors taking part in this, you need to know, live and breathe what their problems are. And that's us. We like to think that we are digitising common sense. What we're coming up with is not rocket science. It's just practical and needs to be addressed by everybody. Thank you. And quite happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you, Neil. Any questions?
You've got a parking ticket.
Quick question. Have you looked at using this technology in other areas outside of loading? Maybe.
Yeah, if you can repeat the question
Okay.
for the benefit of those on the live stream.
Have you looked at using this technology in other application areas, such as access to EV charging points on the curbside?
Absolutely. One of the projects that we're looking at doing in central London with some of the infrastructure operators is that you need to understand where you need the infrastructure. And if you're going to try and get the HGVs to migrate across to EVs, then where do we put the charging infrastructure? What is that vehicle's journey? What does it look like? Where does it want the curbside infrastructure? And if you're going to put a rapid charger in, you can create a virtual loading bay with a rapid charger in, and while you're doing your 20 or your 40-minute delivery, you've got to charge, so you're grazing across the network as you do your deliveries. The private motorists and the private motoring infrastructure will deal with the commercial freight sector first and then work with the industry to see where we can do this as well. The answer is yes.
Good. Another question over here. If you can use the microphone, please, so that it helps the people who are watching on the live stream. Thank you.
My name is Karen. I'm head of membership at the British Parking Association. Neil, we were chatting before on the table. It's so interesting. But what's the biggest challenges for you? What is the biggest hurdle right now? Is it the adoption of these practices? Is it, manifesting the results from the pilot? What's going to stop you rolling this out?
The industry is going to drive it forward, and when you've got operators who are looking at benefits and solutions, they're going to say, right, we are now going to take this to the local authority because there is a way of doing it. Previously, there hasn't been a way of doing it and commoditising it. But the reaction from some local authorities, can we wait and watch someone else fail first? And now that we've proved that we've fallen over 1,000 times, we know what the problems are, we know how to address the problems, and working with the industry and with Julian as well on the traffic order process, the traffic signs regulations and general directions 2016. And I think I'm the only person in the room who's been to the High Court over a parking ticket, Graham. So it's about taking... Yeah. So it's about taking all of that insight and the experience and applying to the relevant the way of running the real world and how it can work. And we know it's going to be difficult. We're not going to try and boil the ocean. We're going to do it a little bit at a time for each sector. So the construction freight sector, you can start mandating into planning policies that you have to adhere to a construction logistics plan. So all of a sudden, the operators are now adhering to a plan, and we can measure those vehicle movements, the time they dwell curbside. Are they idling? Are they not idling? With a view to getting them to change behaviour from the data which comes from the telematics, the integration into CAN bus, etc., etc. So it's about just layering and layering and layering and layering till eventually you get a citywide freight traffic control solution that has all of the data integrated. It has where your parking-based suspensions are. It has where your roadworks are. It even has in real time, there is an accident at this location, can you divert? So that vehicle, that 17-ton truck that was going to do a delivery there can go and repurpose that delivery to somewhere else. So I think the answer was yes.
I think the question was what barriers? Is there a single barrier that if you could address it would make a big difference to your business?
Yeah, convincing investors because we're having to rely on equity investors and support from government as well, that we are building jam tomorrow in an environment that didn't even know what jam was. So we're building a new...
I think you'll find there are probably other companies at a similar stage of growth in this industry facing that same barrier, that same challenge. That might be an interesting one to consider for a future such event. Maybe we usually focus on the issues of the local authorities, but in terms of some of these solutions that are coming through, You know, if we could find some ways to accelerate the growth of some of these companies, I mean, you know, it sounds a great solution.
I think one point to say as well is that this is not about competition in this marketplace. This is about collaboration with the other stakeholders who are providing the solutions, and we're quite happy there to work with anybody and everybody to build that solution, because we know that cities are going to be complex, and it's about how everything plugs together.
And I think actually that was the essence of the comment right at the start of the day, wasn't it? In terms of the companies working together. Yeah. A further question. Anyone else? I mean, it's great to hear how you've kept at it. So, thank you.
It's about finishing just in time for lunch as well. Because you get penalised for overstays in some locations.
Okay. Thank you. He's not bribing you, is he, Tom, behind you?